How do you know when to quit a relationship? How do I know if the relationship I'm in is bad, is not good? Because relationships are incredibly tempting. They tempt us back. They offer comfort, which sometimes necessarily isn't healthy comfort, but they're very hard to leave. And I actually had a conversation with one of my friends recently. I always talk about my friends because it's the only way I know to draw on case studies. So instead of me just coming with something hypothetical, I think about the challenges my friends face. And got a particular friend who's been in a relationship for many, many years, 7, 8 years. Relationship is broken down. And he naturally, because the relationship is broken down, is like jumping to repair. But I wonder if he should even repair because they've broken up 6 times. They've gone through this cycle 6 times. So I'm like, are they just rushing back together for the comfort of the relationship? Or should they, take a moment to say, is this even right? But this also, the answer here applies to people that are in relationships that have those thoughts in their mind. Is this the right one? How do you know? How do you know if this is a problem we can solve and should solve, or this is just the wrong person?
Therapy helps. Has your friend gone to therapy?
Not,
Good therapy?
Not with their partner, no.
Then they don't know. In other words, a lot of people don't know how to deal with conflict, for example. Nobody's taking relationships 101 in high school, right? To learn how to deal with conflict or to learn how to be more vulnerable to somebody else and be more open and so on. So people don't know how to have good relationships. That's part of what drives the work that John and I do. People just don't know how to do it. And if they did know, they could change those patterns. And so, with your friend, for example, oftentimes, when people have been together for over, a couple of years, they create patterns that are like dark holes. They're like black holes that have this tremendous gravitational pull. And so they keep sinking down into the same patterns over and over and over and over again, right?
Well, this is exactly what
that's
happens.
Your friend. But you can change those patterns once you know and practice what the alternatives are.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think it's
not the partner, the pattern.
An alternative pattern.
Yes.
I think when that fondness and admiration system, the system of affection and respect, love and respect is gone and gets replaced by denigration, belittling, contempt. That's the time to bail.
And you've seen this in your work,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
This is like much of what you guys, are known for is this. I mean, whenever I hear people talking about the Gottmans, they're always talking to me about the idea of contempt and the 4 horsemen.
Right.
For anyone that doesn't know.
Those things can change too. Those things can change too. That often is what constitutes the bad pattern. Or there's been so much of that now they avoid each other altogether. And there's huge emotional distance.
What are the 4 horsemen then, before we talk about how we would go about changing, if possible, these things?
Okay.
For anyone that doesn't know, and how you found these 4 horsemen.
Well, Bob Levinson and I, when we were doing our research, the first thing we looked at was what's the ratio of positive to negative emotion in a conversation.
So how did you conduct this experiment?
Really just observing couples talking about how their day went.
How do you
during the day?
Well, wait.
Yeah.
Bring them into the lab.
A lab.
First of all.
What's the lab?
The lab was a room where they sat facing one another. There were video cameras here and there that were focused on each individual and their faces and their body language. There was what was called a jiggleometer, how much they moved in their chairs, how much the chairs moved. Physiological measures, what was happening to their heart rate, as
blood
well.
velocity, respiration, skin conductance.
Right. And all of that data that was pulled from those measures was all synchronized, 100th of a second by 100th of a second. And they would talk for, let's say, 15 minutes about the events of the day. And then they were asked to talk about a problem they hadn't solved and to try and solve it or talk about it. So that, ends up being conflict. and
Then a positive topic.
then a positive topic.
Or in the apartment lab, they just hung out for, 12 hours before they went to sleep, and the cameras just rolled while we collected physiological data. So that
So
ratio...
you really spied on them.
Huh?
You really spied
We
on them.
spied on them, right?
Except they knew they were being spied.
Yeah.
For
And
12 hours, you watch them just sort of chill and hang out together, couples.
that's right,
How many couples have you,
130.
and how many couples have been in the lab in total?
3,000.
3,000.
Yeah.
And they were followed, so then they'd be brought back every
Every-
couple of years,
Right.
right? To see,
How the
well,
relationship changed.
right. So the procedures would be repeated every couple of years for as long as 20 years.
And what did
What
you
would
find?
happen?
So that initially that ratio of positive to negative interaction, even talking about how their day went, or especially during conflict, for people who are in happy, stable relationship, it averaged 5 positives for every negative.
Positives about the other person or about life?
No, just positive emotion. Like,
Let's describe positives. So a positive can be nodding your head. It can be smiling. It can be asking a question,
affection, humor, validation,
showing interest.
interest in the other person. Negative would be anger, irritability, disappointment, hurt, disgust, contempt. Shared humor was another big positive that turned out to be very important. So that ratio of positive to negative averaged 5 to 1 in relationships that were stable and happy
During
And
conflict.
during conflict, and 0.8 to 1 in relationships that were headed for disaster, either splitting up or being together unhappily. But certain negatives were much more predictive of relationship demise, and they were criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling.
So let's define what those are. So criticism means blaming a problem on a personality flaw of your partner. Like, you're so lazy, you'd never think to clean up the kitchen, wouldn't you? Or, God, you're thoughtless. You didn't even call me when you were going to be late. Thoughtless, lazy, inconsiderate,
Always, never.
selfish.
Okay.
Right?
So making it
Those.
about their personality and their character.
That's right. That's
Okay.
a criticism. Contempt is the worst. That's sulfuric acid for a relationship, where you're looking down your nose with disgust as well as criticism of the partner.
Superiority.
So give me an example of that.
You're such an idiot. You just never get things right. It's just, you're just not like me. I'm thoughtful and considerate. And
You're stupid.
you're a narcissist.
Right,
You know,
right. So there's the criticism, but it's making yourself superior to that other person.
Mhm.
And there's a little disgust in it, snide kind of stuff.
sarcasm is a good example.
Mm.
Mockery.
Especially in front of people.
Yeah, right.
Awful.
So the person says, well, I really care how you feel. You really care how I feel. Ugh. So that's contempt.
Yeah.
Stonewalling is really emotional withdrawal
Don't forget defensiveness.
and defensiveness.
Yeah. So defensiveness is the one we all have.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get over, which is, you either kind of whine like an innocent victim. I did too pay the bills on time. What do you mean?
I'm thoughtful.
I am thoughtful. Don't you remember? Blah, blah, blah. Or it's counterattack. Oh, yeah?
You're so perfect, huh?
You never clean up the kitchen. It's that counterattack.
Do you find that insecure people are more defensive?
Sure.
I have this theory that if your self-esteem and your self-perception of yourself is fragile, then anyone poking at it at all causes such extreme pain
Right.
that you live in this state of I have never done anything wrong. I can't possibly do anything wrong. And if someone points out something you've done wrong,
Right.
it's so painful if you're insecure.
Right. Walking on
It's like tickling
eggshells.
it. Yeah, exactly. It's like playing with an open wound.
Yeah.
So,
It's like you're a walking burn victim.
yeah.
The way I like to describe it, because I've been there, I know what that's like, is, the earth. If you take a picture of the earth, and the earth has this very thin crust on it, and then you go down some layers, and in the center is this boiling hot lava, that burns you to death. Well, somebody says to you, why didn't you pay the bills on time? And the earth opens up, you fall through that crack and straight down into that hot lava of self-loathing that is agony, absolute, and you feel like you're getting burned to death. So you can't allow yourself to step into that crack and say, oh, God, you're right, I didn't.
So you defend.
You defend. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm the one who does all the bill paying. What are you doing? You know, it's defensiveness.
Well, in that case, it sounds like that's fundamentally linked to some kind of trauma, because you didn't pay the bills to the average person would be, yeah, I know, sorry, my bad. But if that's linked to maybe, I don't know, your childhood where your father or your mother or the bullies on the playground told you that you're so forgetful, Steve or Julie, you're the most forgetful person ever, and then they punched you. You could get to, 40.
Can be. Yeah, can be. And then stonewalling, this was one that was so fascinating because you could have, a pair of people sitting just like this, looking perfectly normal. But you notice that one is completely shutting down, not showing anything on their face, in their body, maybe looking away or just glazed, looking and not saying a word. And that's not for seconds, it's for minutes. And what's actually going on, because these guys, John and his colleagues measured physiology, is that they feel so attacked that their heart rates are zooming up above 100 beats a minute, which just sitting here?
It's secreting cortisol and adrenaline massively. And so they're shutting down.
Yeah. It's going into fight or flight. Only you're not facing a saber-toothed tiger. You're facing your partner.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.